Getting a divorce in Pennsylvania is actually simpler than you might think. Either spouse must be a resident of Pennsylvania for at least 6 months before filing. The divorce may be filed in a county where the defendant resides, the plaintiff resides if the defendant does not live in Pennsylvania, the marriage home was if the plaintiff continuously resided in the same county, prior to 6 months after separation, and if the defendant agrees, the plaintiff resides, prior to 6 months after separation, and if neither spouse lives in the county of the marriage home, either spouse lives, and after 6 months following the separation, either spouse lives. Once the residency requirement is completed, a legal grounds for a divorce must be established. Both general and no-fault divorce are acceptable grounds for divorce. The no-fault reasons are irretrievable breakdown of the marriage with the spouses living separate and apart without cohabitation for 2 years, or irretrievable breakdown of the marriage and the spouses have both filed affidavits that they consent to the divorce. In the case of no-fault ground, the court may delay the case for 90 to 120 days if it appears that there is a reasonable chance for reconciliation, and 90 days must elapse after the filing for divorce before the court will grant a divorce. The general reasons for divorce are adultery, bigamy, imprisonment for 2 or more years, confinement for incurable insanity for 18 months, willful desertion for 1 year, cruel and inhuman treatment endangering the life of the spouse, and personal indignity. Pennsylvania does not require a parenting plan for child custody. Joint or sole custody may be awarded based on the best interests of the child and consideration of which parent is more likely to encourage, permit, and allow frequent and continuing contact, including physical access between the other parent and the child. Whether either parent has engaged in any violent, criminally sexual, abusive, or harassing behavior, the preference of the child, and any factor that affects the child's physical, intellectual, and emotional well-being. Both parents may require attendance at counseling sessions regarding child custody. The recommendations of the counselor may be used in determining child custody. In shared custody, the court may also require a written plan for child custody submitted to the court. Either or both parents may be ordered to provide child support according to their ability to pay. The considerations by statute are the net income of the parents, the earning capacity of the parents, the assets of the parents, any unusual needs of the child or the parents, and any extraordinary expenses. Child support may be paid through the domestic relations section of the court. There are official child support guidelines available, and these are presumed to be correct unless there is a showing that the amount would be unjust or inappropriate under the circumstances of the case. The court may require health insurance coverage be provided for any child if it is available at a reasonable cost. Child support payments may need to be paid through the domestic relations section of the court. Pennsylvania is an equitable distribution state. Separate property that is acquired prior to the marriage, acquired in exchange for any separate property, any gifts and inheritances, and any property designated as separate in a valid agreement between the spouses will be retained by the owner. All marital property will be divided equitably, regardless of marital misconduct, based on the contribution or dissipation of each spouse to the acquisition, preservation, depreciation, or appreciation of the marital property, including the contribution of each spouse as homemaker, the age and health of the spouses, the vocational skills of the spouses, the value of each spouse's property, the economic circumstances of each spouse at the time the division of property is to become effective, the length of the marriage, the tax consequences to each spouse, the occupation of the spouses, the amount and sources of income of the spouses, including retirement and any other benefits, the employability of the spouses, the liabilities and needs of each spouse, and the opportunity of each for further acquisition of capital assets and income, the standard of living established during the marriage, whether a spouse will have custody of any minor children, any contributions toward the education, training, or increased earning power of the other spouse, any prior marital obligations, and any other factor necessary to do equity and justice between the spouses. The court may require a spouse to purchase or maintain life insurance and name the other spouse as beneficiary. Both spouses must submit an inventory and appraisal of their property. Alimony may be awarded to either spouse. In determining the alimony award, the following factors are considered: Whether the spouse seeking alimony lacks sufficient property to provide for his or her own needs. Whether the spouse is unable to be self-supporting through appropriate employment. Whether the spouse seeking alimony is the custodian of a child. The time necessary to acquire sufficient education and training to enable the spouse to find appropriate employment and that spouse's future earning capacity. Any tax consequences. The standard of living established during the marriage. The duration of the marriage. The financial resources of the spouse seeking alimony, including marital property apportioned to such spouse and such spouse's separate property. The comparative financial resources of the spouses. The needs and obligations of each spouse. The contribution of each spouse to the marriage, including services rendered in homemaking. The age of the spouses. The physical, mental, and emotional conditions of the spouses. The probable duration of the need of the spouse seeking support and alimony. The educational level of each spouse at the time of the marriage and the time necessary for the spouse to acquire sufficient education to find appropriate employment. The contribution by one spouse to the education, training, or increased earning power of the other. The spouse's sources of income, including medical, insurance, retirement benefits, inheritances, assets and liabilities, and any property brought into the marriage by either spouse. Any marital misconduct, and any other factor the court deems just and equitable. Official spousal support guidelines are used in Pennsylvania, and these are presumed correct unless the amount would be unjust or inappropriate under the circumstances. Alimony may be ordered to be paid through the domestic relations section of the court. If the court determines that there is a reasonable chance of reconciliation, it may order counseling for a period of between 90 and 120 days. Upon request by either spouse, 3 counseling sessions may be required. If no reconciliation is reached and one spouse states that the marriage is irretrievably broken, a divorce may be granted. Counseling sessions may also be ordered in conjunction with child custody and are mandatory if a parent has been convicted of a violent or abusive crime. Visit us today at www.mydivorcepapers.com and click on Pennsylvania at the bottom of the page. Let mydivorcepapers.com help you file for divorce today.